Dia here from I-49, and you're listening to the Kingdom Advantage podcast with Dionne van Zyl. Again and again, we're hearing from business leaders that the growth that the company so desperately needed brought with it even more problems and complexity. Being the primary problem solver in your business is absolutely exhausting. But how do you let go if you're increasingly worried that your team doesn't have what it takes to bring it to the next level? Today we're talking about doing what you love, where we learn that leaning into your strengths and ruthlessly eliminating everything else is key to supercharging your team's productivity and your well-being at work. Let's hand it over to Dionne as he shares an excerpt from our monthly CEO call, The Inner Circle, where we help entrepreneurs and leaders solve complex problems in their businesses from a kingdom perspective.
So let's take the next step here. This is a great thing to do for your team members at least once a year and for yourself. So if you map your joy versus your contribution to the organization. So obviously then you're going to have in the top left, you're going to have high joy but low contribution. Top right is going to be high joy, high contribution, and so on, right, as you go through that process. So the question is, from doing a 4-square strategy, which we did something similar last month on products and services and which ones should we get rid of and kill and so forth. But this is about your personal joy and contribution. Obviously, number one quadrant here is high joy, high contribution. That's where you want to spend as much of your time. By the way, this is also what you love doing is your highest contribution to the organization. That's the reason you love it. It's your A seat, it's where your grace flows, etc. Number two is there's still high joy for you because, again, joy is also part of your strength. So, but low contribution. Number three is low joy, but high contribution. You don't necessarily get joy out of it, but it really helps the organization when you do it. And number four is the worst. Low joy, low contribution. So the question here then is, what do we do about these? I would love you to take and put 1, 2, or even 3 examples in each quadrant for yourself. Just take a piece of paper, draw the squares, and do this for yourself. Fill out quadrants 1, 2, 3, and 4. Try to put at least 2 items in each, and then we'll get straight back to the nuts and bolts of this. Whenever you do this 4-square strategy, it always uses the same approach, right? The approach by now is, step 1, delete everything in 4. Today, if possible. You should not be doing this. This needs to get off your list. You say, well, we're a small team, we got whatever, we don't need a lot of people. You have to delete this off your list. These low joy, low contribution things, somebody else can order the stationery. You have to get this stuff off your list today. When we talked about doing this, when we went through the product analysis and how to look at the products and services you offer, it's the same thing. We want to get rid of 4. 3, this is a high contribution. So this is where you can buy back your time. This is where you can hire someone, get a VA, or delegate this to someone else in your organization who does love this, who for them it is a high joy. Maybe they can't do the same contribution at the same level you can, but to quote Dan, even if they can do 80% of what you did, that's good enough. Don't look for somebody who can deliver it at the same level or better. If you're looking for your next hire, here's where you're going to focus on. You're going to focus your next hire in the business around this. We need someone. Now, if you're in a team and there's literally no one to delegate, it's going to be your next hire. If there's no one in the team that can carry a high contribution element to the organization, this is your next hire. I think that makes sense to you guys? Yep. And number 2, the high joy, low contribution, the key here is to contain it. This is where when we don't feel like doing the number 1 stuff, these are like our filler tasks we do. It's like, well, I'm just going to tweak that design a little more, going to get it pixel perfect. It's not making any contribution, but gives me so much joy doing it. Going to get that color in that design just right, because I'm telling myself that, man, I'm just committed to excellence. What I'm really doing is making an excuse for not containing quadrant 2 stuff. So, hey, just do it, just contain it, Set also, if it's a high joy thing, it usually doesn't need your prime time. It doesn't need your prime allocation at that moment, right? It doesn't need, if you're best in the morning, then don't do quadrant 2 stuff first thing in the morning. Put all your quadrant 1 stuff, prioritize this, your high contribution, high joy stuff. Also, by prioritization, I don't mean just do it first. I mean, schedule it in your day at the time you have the highest energy. When you have the highest energy together with your high joy, high contribution, this is when you're going to become massively effective at what you do. And I would also put around quadrant 1 here is quadrant 1 needs defense. You need to protect this time. This time needs protection. What do I mean by that? No emails, no social media, no distractions, because you know from all the research we've already shared with you that multitasking makes you dumb. It literally causes you to drop your IQ by 10, 15, even sometimes as high as 20 points. So none of this, I'm brilliant at multitasking stuff. It's not true. You just do a lot of things poorly. So what you do when you're in this mode, really prioritize this stuff together and cut out and don't answer your text, don't answer your phone, lock this down. If you can protect quadrant 1 and delete quadrant 4, you've already doubled your productivity in this one session. Literally. Think about it for a second. If you can protect 1, delete 4, you're on the road. The 2 is easier to contain. 3 may take a little more work. Lean into your strengths. Give your best time to 1s, for sure. And then on 3, use that time to figure out, how can I give this? Can I do this with a virtual assistant? Can I outsource this? Can I delegate this to another team member? Is there some other way that I can do this? I know that Dan Mattel's view is your first hire should be an executive assistant. I know that's what he thinks. If you're starting a business, that your first hire should be an EA. That is fine up to a point if it fits in this grid. It depends a lot about what you're doing and how you work. So there's no doubt in his case that must be the case because of the way that he works. Because once you've done this prioritization, this is only step 2 of the exercise. Step 3 is still coming when we start putting this down into a calendar. So as you're going through this process, I found that you need to do this for yourself at least every 6 months. You've got to stop for a sec because it drifts. You start off getting clear and then it just drifts off, and taking stuff off you. You say, well, I'm the owner, I'm a kingdom leader. I should be a servant leader. I should be willing to do the lousy jobs. Actually, you're not serving your team by doing this. You're not serving your partnership because it's not your biggest contribution to the organization. So you have to not only prioritize and protect thank you so much, your contribution to the organization, but I bet you that's also where your permission is. So it's counterintuitive, right? You might find, though, that there is a way to add joy to a 3 to make it a 1. Sometimes it's the way you're doing 3. So if you think of what moves the needle there, let's just go back there for a second, right? What's moving the needle? So think about, why is it a 3 and not a 1? It's lacking joy. Maybe there's something I can add to that process. Maybe there's the way I do it. And, we talk about inversion, where you add 2 things that don't go together, like I think the example Greg McKeown gave in his book, Effortless, he hated returning phone calls. He was very good at returning phone calls to his key clients at the end of the day, but he always left them to the end of the day because it was a low joy, but high contribution to his business. But then he thought, what do I love to do? I love to sit in the hot tub and drink my favorite wine. So guess what he did? He sat in the hot tub with his favorite wine and called his customers. And the first thing he told them is, I'm calling you from the hot tub. Now that's a way he added joy, and he made a 3 a 1. So that is an option. You can do that. So, there are ways to do it. I don't think you should try to fix 4s. I think you should just get rid of them as fast as possible. But 3s you can work on. And 2s, you think, well, if it's high joy, why is it such a low contribution? You might find a way to increase its contribution somehow, maybe by combining it with something else, like something else that's also more strategic. So you can be clever by changing and combining things. So this idea of combining something you don't like doing with something you love doing, that can be a very powerful technique called inversion. It's a very powerful way. So why it's called inversion is in quadrant 3, it's like, oh, this is such drudgery. Well, what if it's not? So that's what you've asked the opposite question. What is it? What if it's not drudgery to me? What if it's not, I have to do this thing? What would not make me feel that? And so you could up it that way. But I prefer the delegating and hire plan. I do think it's better. Okay. I was thinking of another story that might help. I think I'm quoting Pat Flynn, the guy who wrote Superfans, and Pat says it's a lot for him to respond to his subscribers. There's so many of them, firstly, and you get so many. He feels like, oh, I'm not doing enough, but he does love walking his dog. So on Friday afternoons, he does an extra long walk with the dog for an hour. And he takes his phone and he just does these quick down and dirty. He doesn't try to do a production level anything, just his phone, raw, go live. Hey, I was thinking about you, or just saying thank you. And he calls it surprising your customer. They weren't expecting to hear from you. It's a very powerful way to connect with people. So anyway, he combines something he doesn't like doing, responding to the social media crowd of subscribers and so on, with something he does love doing. So, and I wanted to call on Dia. Where are you? There you go. I know you've been practicing this for some years, this inversion idea.
Yeah, I have. And one of my favorite techniques, once you really get it down for yourself, is to use it for all your team members. Because you can take someone who maybe was performing well or mediocre and rearrange and shifting their table or their work responsibilities to making them a superstar and a super contributor. So it's really empowering and it's really exciting. And it's just one of my favorite things to do because it gets it right down to the very, very core elements very quickly. And then learning, okay, can I automate? Can I batch tasks? Can I use inversion? How do I hack this system so that we get all the things done that have to get done, but do it in a way that brings more life and more joy? Was there something specific you wanted me to talk about, Dionne?
No. Well, have you ever combined two things to help you increase
I
joy of
have.
accomplishment?
Yeah,
I know
I
the
have.
answer, but I
So for
wanted you to
me,
say it.
yes, exactly. It always comes down to coffee and chocolate. So I always use my inversion. If there's something I don't want to do, I'll make sure I have my coffee prepared ahead of time and my chocolate prepared ahead of time so that I can get through whatever those tasks are that are maybe my B seat or it's definitely the C seat items if I can't delegate or, move those on to somewhere else.
Thanks for sharing that. We'll go through the power hack of this in a second here. But if we go back to this exercise, so here's how you design your week. So now we know our ABC seat stuff, we know our joy table. Now, how do we put all that into a schedule? So I thought I'll share mine with you. This is how we do this, and I'll go through all the design elements and so forth. So the first thing for me is in my partnership with the Lord. As you know, I run 4 companies. So in the 4 entities, they are 4 entities, but they're very strongly related. Effectively, we're one company that serves 4 different customers groups, 4 different who's your who. We have 4 different who's. That's why we have 4 companies. So for me, this design element number 1 is set up a rhythm to think of a hat. What hat am I wearing? I can put on my School of Leadership hat or my church hat. The way I'm set up is I start with what's my focus. I've given each day a focus. So for me, my Monday is my leadership focus. And I'm not talking about the topic of leadership. I'm talking about leading the people I lead. So in my case, Bridget helps me run the church. So she runs all the community stuff and so for the church. Jenny helps me run Brilliant Perspectives. Graham and I run the School of Leadership. And then Dia helps me run I-49, The Edge. So for me, Mondays is my leadership day. So I will speak to the leaders who are involved. I speak to Bridget anyway, but I'm talking about specifically about the church. Then, of course, I meet with Dia and with Jenny and so forth, and with Graham. So I meet with all 4 of those leaders on a Monday. Now, I've got here what we call bucket 1 and bucket 2. So those who've been through this training, just bear with me for those who haven't. A bucket is a 4 hours. Think of it as the morning and the afternoon, right? So you've really got, if you think about it, you've only got 10 buckets in the week, right? And the reason why we think of buckets and not hours and half hours and all those other things is because the second design element is group similar activities to reduce switching costs. What do we mean by switching costs? So if you think of what creates fatigue at the end of your business day, is when you keep switching from one task to another that are quite different. When you switch tasks and they are materially enough different, what happens is it takes your brain 20 to 40 minutes to fully switch over. Although you've already started working on the new thing, your brain takes a while to fully commit. It's like deep sleep. If you're going to sleep and then you hit that very deep sleep stage, work is the same. You can hit deep work, that deep. And Cal Newport talks about that in his book, Deep Work. So it's the same thing. If I wake you up every half an hour through the night, said, how's your sleep going? How's your sleep going? That's what managers do to employees all the time. How's your work going? How's your work going? Yeah, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. How's your work going? So when we do that, what we do is we interrupt this process. If we batch stuff together that is similar, there's no switching costs. The reason you feel tired and mentally fatigued at the end of each day is because you were switching too many times in a day. Go back and look. The days you were most exhausted were the days you switched the most, almost always. The days that you were able to really deeply concentrate on things. Here's the thing, because you're in rest and you're partnering with the Lord, you don't have to worry about carrying everything. That allows you a new level of freedom in architecting your week. So my bucket one, bucket two, morning, afternoon, if you prefer, but I'm thinking them as a bucket of similar things. But most people's buckets, they have holes in them. What is a hole in the bucket? Emails, interruptions, whatever, cause all that switching. So when you're in a certain mode, you turn off your emails, you turn off your message, you turn off everything else, and you allow yourself the joy of having a protected, focused time. So bucket one, I meet with the leaders and I review with them the goals for the week. What are we doing? More precisely, I'm asking them, what's your big goal for the week? And I'm expecting, because they're all kingdom leaders, I'm expecting them to tell me out of their partnership with the Lord, what's the big thing for the week? What's your big deliverable for the week? And then the second part is Graham and I spent our time together just doing content. So we create content, work on our theology. And that content, by the way, feeds all the other elements of what we do. The reason why we have however many 8 people who can all teach and coach and all that stuff at Brilliant is because that content is spread throughout. You don't get a different thing. It's the same idea. That consistency is really important to us. So how that language, those concepts, those ideas, and it's not just Graham and I creating, the whole team is creating, but somebody has to put it all together. On my Tuesdays, that's the Brilliant School of Leadership, or BSOL, as we call it internally, for those of you that are on BSOL, on the BSOL school. So that's the 40-week, 1 hour a week school. And that's Graham and I together. And so we do the class 1 in the morning, class 2 in the afternoon. Now, I do not schedule meetings. I try not to schedule meetings on these days. And the reason is, if I schedule meetings right up and I'm still in a switching cost mode, by the time I start teaching the class gets a raw deal. Like, even a perfect example, right? Today's Wednesday, obviously, and afternoons in a circle once a month. When it's not that, I'm trying to connect to the community or handling some of your SOS calls. Just to remind you, by the way, when you sign up for Inner Circle, you get 2 free SOS calls. We can just hang out and talk about whatever you want to talk about. So we can do that. So sometimes I'm doing that. Just before I started this call, half an hour before I started this call, I got a call from one of the other team members, and and it's a pretty important thing. He wanted to discuss with me about some issue, and I said, the only reason I'm answering this call is to let you know I'm not ignoring you, but I don't want to discuss anything. I don't want you to switch my mind out of the mode. And I've been in this inner circle mode the whole day. I got up early this morning. I was with the Lord early this morning. I was talking about what he wanted, what was the gift he wanted you to have. And while I was thinking and talking about that, I felt like I should invite some guests, which we have 3 guests on here for that reason. All that came out of that partnership. And then, of course, Dia and I work on Edge Marketing on Wednesdays. Thursdays is content management. I pull it all together. We have automated tools and all the cool stuff we do because we record, transcribe, collate every single piece of document, everything we do, whether we're coaching in the church or whether we're doing this or anything else, everything gets tracked, managed, and we have a management system for that. And then we have church staff meeting in the afternoon. That's when we talk about the once a month gatherings. We talk about small groups and how they're going. And we talk about coaching, Brilliant Life Coaching, and everything else that goes on there. And then on Fridays is my co-creation time with the Lord. Remember, I said I give one session where the Lord and I create new stuff together. And so, and then finally, I get on the community app and I respond to people on the Brilliant School of Leadership. And I also do a little bit of coaching, one-on-one coaching that I do. And that's so in this structure, here's all the design elements. Set up a rhythm to your week. So think of wearing a different hat. Now, switching costs is like switching hats all the time. If you're constantly switching hats from this to this to this to this, so batch all the tasks together. My suggestion is do not start your morning with answering emails. I know that's a high temptation. Don't do that. In fact, do that at the end of the day or some dead spot or between two buckets or something. That will really mess with the switching costs for sure. Group similar activities together, create margin between events. It's always amazing, or between appointments. It's always amazing to people say, oh, my last meeting ran over. And when happening once, I get that. But when their last meeting's always running over, it's like, okay, So if you're ever on a call with Team Brilliant, you'll know 3 minutes beforehand, everybody's on. And we're waiting. And the meeting part starts at the announced time. We don't start getting on at the hour and then it takes another 3, 4, 5 minutes and hello, can you hear me? And all that stuff. All that's gone. So we get on the call beforehand and we hit the meet. And it's so respectful to each other's time that if somebody got so into a deep work and they forgot and they weren't watching the time, we're getting ready to call 911. They must be dead on the side of the road. It's already 4 minutes past the hour. Because we have such a reputation that we don't do that something else must be going on. And some of us, life happens. We skip meetings because we weren't watching the time. But at least that's not our normal way. And then you take appointments based on your buckets. So you group appointments together, and then you tell your EA, if you have one, or your virtual assistant or whatever, to set aside the same time each week for appointments. What you do not want to do is just have appointments spread and just nilly-willy throughout the week. That's the last thing you want. That will just literally destroy your ability to get any deep work done. So, and then with your appointments, make sure there's a gap between them, even if it's 10 minutes. If you do the few things we talked about today, you protect number ones and you batch stuff together and you get rid of fours and you start improving threes, and you put this simple structure together, I'd be shocked if you don't double your productivity in a week. Seriously. So my goal was always to do a month's worth of work in a week. Yeah. And I felt that I achieved that a little while ago. But what I've really found is that the more restful I become, the more I do. It's the craziest thing. It's like you end up that light speed thing kicks in. So here's some power hacks. I'm focusing on finding delight at work. That little exercise we did with delight versus contribution, joy versus contribution. It's called the joy table. Get your team to do this. The reason is when they get to do it, you'll end up with a fantastic conversation because you can teach them to delete certain things, right? Stop optimizing things that shouldn't exist. Stop optimizing things that should be deleted, right? SpaceX calls it the algorithm. We can get into that, how to make things less dumb. Teach your team, what can you delete? What can you delegate? What can you automate? Those simple 3 things will shift stuff around on that joy table for them. Maybe we need an EA. What you might find is if you did the joy table, one of your team members, you could free them up to do something that take on that level 3, but then get them a VA, which will give them more delight, brings more joy to them, brings certainly more joy to you, frees you up. Now you're in the game. So it's these tiny little shifts in the organization that just, people often say to us, how did you get 500% productivity improvement at Brilliant with half the size of the team? How did you do that? Here's the trick. We didn't try to do that. What we did is, it's these tiny, small adjustments, mindsets, giving your team permission, and just constantly Kaizen, constantly improving. But the key is invest in the people, not the processes. People first. Let the people create the processes, teach them how. Then if you suddenly have to pivot, they can do that. They're the ones who made the process, they can pivot. And it's these little conversations. And then I think, Ben, you and I had this one conversation once when you talked about this and said, how much training time should I do? And my answer to that was a lot. You spend a lot of your time as the primary coach, because think of leadership metaphor as the conductor of the orchestra, not the primary player of the big musical instruments. But how many leaders are playing the violin, then rush over, hit the drum, then rush over, and then that's not an orchestra. That's just you running around trying to play all the instruments, because nobody does it better than you. Yeah, you know what you don't do better with is everybody playing at the same time. So that's what you don't do better at. So here's the thing. That means as the conductor of the orchestra, you're the only musician who doesn't make a sound. You become successful by making other people powerful. That is kingdom leadership. So from your viewpoint, when you're thinking about this, think this through in this way. What can I do to make this person more powerful? Take that little joy table, make them draw it up. You'll have a great conversation. And by the way, if you pick 2 people a week or 3 people a week, if you have a bigger team, just work through them slowly. You don't have to do them all at once. Just work through it slowly with them. You'll be astounded at how much you release them. By the way, just showing them the attention and even just showing the kindness of the conversation has an effect. That has an immediate lift right there. Coach, be the primary coach. So Jack Welch, at the time, I know there's been a lot of stuff around Jack Welch, but at the time, many people thought he was one of the greatest CEOs of the 20th century. And he spent 70% of his time training. So don't think it's a little sideshow thing. It's not. You invest in your people, you'll get to a point where they'll run the business for you. But if you always have to run the business, at some point you have to stop being the expert and manage the expert. That's a tough transition, man. I remember when I love software programming, when I had to stop writing code and manage people who wrote code, that was a big shift. I remember that day. That was a tough decision, because I don't want to be a manager. I want to write code. At some point you have to stop being the expert, manage the expert, but not just managing them, but setting them free with these ideas and these tools. Because everything we're talking about here is designed to build people, not use people. We grow people, we don't use them. Just like the Lord doesn't use you.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. As always, thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more of this kind of content or submit a question for us to answer live, visit us at dionnevanzyl.com or check the link in the description.